The outer edge of the Orion Spur was not a place where people went to become famous. It was where they went to disappear, to start over, or to build something that the crowded inner worlds no longer had room for. The colony of Greyridge sat on a rocky planet with wide skies and thin clouds that moved like slow rivers. The air was safe enough with filters, and the soil could grow tough crops if the farmers did not give up. Out here, every day was work, and every small success felt like a victory. Humans lived on Greyridge beside several alien groups. Some were traders who came and went. Some were families who had chosen the frontier life. And some were crews who stayed only long enough to refuel and repair their ships. They did not all agree on laws, customs, or even what counted as polite. But they shared one truth. Out here, a broken power line or a damaged engine could mean disaster. Survival did not care about pride. A man named Ethan Cade understood that better than most. He was a human engineer with hands that always had small cuts and grease under the nails. He lived in a compact home near the edge of the landing field, where the wind carried the smell of metal and dust. His workshop was built from old ship panels and reinforced glass. Inside, tools hung in neat rows. Shelves held parts that he had repaired, improved, and labeled. A small heater sat under his desk, humming softly. The place was not fancy, but it was warm and steady like the man himself. Ethan had come to Greyridge after leaving a larger station behind. He never spoke much about why. People guessed. Some thought he had lost family. Some thought he had argued with the wrong person in the wrong office. Ethan did not correct them. He just worked. He fixed landing gear, patched hull plates, tuned old engines, and built small devices that made daily life easier. He charged fair prices. When someone could not pay, he accepted food, labor, or a promise. Because of that, the colony trusted him. Even the aliens who did not trust humans in general trusted Ethan. A tall, long-necked trader named Vesh once said, in a careful voice, that Ethan's mind was quiet but sharp, and that was a compliment among Vesh's people. A small group of armored miners from a species called the Karun often asked Ethan to check their drilling suits. They did not smile much, but they left extra ore at his door when he worked late. A human woman named Mara, who ran the colony's supply office, liked to tell newcomers, "If you break it, Ethan can fix it. If Ethan can't fix it, you should probably leave the planet." Ethan did not enjoy attention. He kept his life simple. He woke early, drank bitter tea, and listened to the weather reports. He kept a little music player on his bench, but he played it low. At night, he read old stories on a cracked tablet and fell asleep before midnight. That quiet life changed on the day the sky turned strange. It began as a normal morning, with a pale sun rising behind thin clouds. Ethan was replacing a worn-out coolant line on a small cargo shuttle when the wind shifted. It came fast and cold, carrying a sharp, sour smell that made his eyes water. He paused, wiped his hands on a cloth, and looked toward the far ridge where the colony's atmospheric stabilizers stood like tall black towers. Those towers were supposed to keep storms mild. They were supposed to smooth the rough edges of this planet's wild weather. Most days they did their job, but today something was wrong. The stabilizer lights flickered in an uneven rhythm. A low vibration traveled through the ground, so soft at first that Ethan felt it more than he heard it. The air seemed to tighten, like a muscle tensing. Then the first crack of thunder rolled across the plain, deeper than it should have been. People stepped out of buildings and looked up. Ethan set down his tool and climbed onto the shuttle's wing for a better view. The clouds were thickening, twisting into dark folds. A spiral shape began to form, moving too quickly. It was not a natural storm pattern. It looked like a machine trying to imitate weather and failing. Myra's voice burst from a nearby speaker on the landing field. "All workers, shelter protocol. Repeat, shelter protocol. Atmospheric stabilizers are unstable. Get inside now." Ethan jumped down, ran into his workshop, and grabbed a small case. He checked the power readouts and sealed the outer doors. The building shuddered as the wind hit it hard. Dust slammed against the glass. A siren began to howl in the distance. He should have stayed inside. Every sensible part of his mind told him to wait it out. But then a new sound cut through the storm, metal tearing, followed by a dull impact. A ship had come down. Ethan's stomach tightened. Ships sometimes landed in bad weather, but this was different. This was the stabilizer system failing, turning the sky into a dangerous machine. He pulled on a weather jacket, clipped a small breathing filter over his nose, and stepped outside. The wind hit him like a shove. He leaned into it and forced his way toward the landing field's far edge, where old cargo pads sat unused. Visibility was low. The world had become gray, with dust and rain mixed together. Lightning flashed somewhere beyond the ridge, turning everything white for a single sharp moment. He saw it then, an overturned cargo transport, half buried in loose soil, its side split open like a cracked shell. One of its thrusters was still sparking. The ship's marking lights blinked weakly. Ethan moved carefully, using the transport's frame as cover from the wind. He shouted, but the storm stole his voice. He climbed onto the tilted hull and peered into the torn opening. Inside, crates had spilled like broken teeth. Foam packing floated around in the rain. A strong, unfamiliar smell rose from the cargo bay, something like heated stone mixed with spice. Then he heard it, a small sound, thin and sharp, like a breath caught between fear and pain. Ethan froze. It was not the sound of a machine. He climbed into the cargo bay. The interior was dim, lit only by emergency strips along the floor. Water dripped from the ceiling. He moved between toppled containers, careful not to slip. He followed the sound to a corner where a crate had broken open. Behind it, pressed against a wall, was a child. She was alien and very small, smaller than a human child of the same age would be. Her skin was a pale blue-gray, textured like smooth stone. She wore a protective suit that looked like light armor, but parts of it were cracked. A thin layer of shielding foam clung to her shoulder and one leg. Her eyes were large and dark, reflecting the emergency lights. She stared at Ethan with fear so strong it felt like a physical thing in the air. Ethan raised both hands, palms open, and spoke slowly, using the simplest words he could. "Hey, it's okay, I'm here to help." The child made a sound that might have been a warning. She tried to pull herself deeper into the corner, but her movement was stiff. She was hurt. Ethan took one careful step closer. He kept his voice calm. "I'm not going to hurt you, I'm Ethan, Ethan." Her eyes flicked to the filter on his face, then to his hands. She seemed to look for weapons. He had none. Outside, the storm shook the transport again, and the hull groaned. A bright flash lit the cargo bay. The child flinched hard, and her breathing became faster. Ethan glanced up at the torn opening. "We can't stay here," he said, more to himself than to her. "This ship isn't safe." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small emergency light, turned it on, and set it on the floor so the child could see him clearly. Then he slowly unhooked his jacket and held it out in front of him like a blanket. "This is warm," he said. "You're cold, I can carry you out." The child did not move, but the next gust of wind made the transport tilt slightly, and a crate slid across the floor with a loud scrape. The child's eyes widened. She looked at Ethan again, then toward the opening, then back. She seemed to make a decision. Her fear did not vanish, but it shifted. Ethan moved closer, very slowly, and knelt. He did not touch her at first. He just waited, letting her see that he was not rushing. The child lifted one hand, shaking, and touched the edge of the jacket. It was a small gesture, but it mattered. Ethan nodded. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay, I'll help." He slid the jacket around her gently and lifted her with steady arms. She was lighter than he expected. Her body trembled. She let out a soft sound that might have been pain. Ethan turned and moved back through the cargo bay, stepping over debris. He climbed out into the storm, shielding her with his body. The wind tried to tear the jacket away. Rain stung his face. The child pressed her head against his chest, as if hiding inside the only warm place available. Ethan focused on one thing, getting back to his workshop. He staggered through the dust and rain, each step a fight. Twice, lightning flashed so close he felt the heat. A loud crack split the air, and something heavy hit the ground not far away, maybe a metal panel ripped from the transport. He did not stop. At last he reached his workshop door. He punched the manual release, pulled the door open, and stumbled inside. He slammed it shut behind him and locked the seal. The outside noise became muffled at once, like the storm had been pushed behind thick walls. Ethan stood in the dim workshop, breathing hard. The child was still in his arms, trembling. He carried her to the small couch near the heater and set her down carefully. She tried to sit up, but her injured leg did not move properly. She grimaced, and a sharp hiss escaped her. Ethan's heart clenched. He removed his jacket from around her and examined her armor suit. It was well made, but the cracks looked serious. The suit was meant to protect her. Now it might be hurting her by pressing wrong. He kept his movements slow. "I need to check you," he said. "You're hurt. I have a medical kit, okay?" The child stared at him. Her breathing slowed a little. Her eyes still held fear, but now there was something else too, confusion maybe. Why would a human help an alien child during a storm? Why would he bring her into his home? Ethan moved to a cabinet and pulled out a small medical kit. He grabbed a scanner tool used to check for fractures in humans and some common alien bodies. The colony required those tools for emergencies. He returned to the couch and showed her the scanner first. "This only looks," he said. "No pain." He turned it on and let it beep in the air, then slowly moved it near her arm. The child flinched but did not pull away. The scanner displayed basic readings. Ethan frowned. He did not recognize her species exactly, but the tool could detect general issues: swelling, heat, stress, damage. Her left leg had a strain, maybe a fracture. Her shoulder was bruised. No major internal damage showed up, but he could not be fully sure. He reached for a small packet of cooling gel. "This helps swelling," he said. He opened it and squeezed a little onto his fingers, then paused. "May I?" The child did not speak. She made a tiny motion, almost like a nod. Ethan applied the gel gently to her shoulder where the armor had cracked. She hissed again but did not strike him. He could tell she was trying to be brave. He wrapped a soft support band around her leg, careful not to press too hard. He added a thin warming blanket from the kit and placed it over her. Then he poured a cup of warm water and added a little sugar, because sugar helped in many cases, even across species. He did not know if it would help her, but warmth and hydration rarely hurt. He held the cup at a safe distance. "Drink," he said softly. "Small sips." The child's eyes flicked to the cup. She sniffed the air, then reached out with both hands. Her fingers were small and had faint ridges along them. She held the cup like it might bite her. Ethan watched as she took a careful sip. Her shoulders relaxed a fraction. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but the workshop was stable. The heater hummed. The lights flickered once and held. Ethan sat on a stool a few feet away, giving her space. He did not want to crowd her. He did not want to make her feel trapped. Minutes passed. The child studied the room. Her eyes tracked the tools on the walls, the shelves of parts, the small plant by the window. She looked at Ethan again, then away, then back. Finally, she made a sound, 2 short syllables in a language Ethan had never heard. It might have been her name or a question. Ethan pointed to himself. "Ethan," he said again. Then he pointed to her, raising his eyebrows. The child hesitated, then spoke again, clearer this time. "Sarah," Ethan repeated it carefully. "Sarah," she nodded once. It was definite now. Ethan felt a small smile pull at his mouth. "Okay, Sarah, we'll get you through this." Sarah's gaze shifted toward the sealed door as if she expected someone to burst in at any moment. Her body remained tense. Ethan understood. If her people were searching, they might be dangerous, or they might blame him, or they might not believe his intentions, but she was a child. Alone, injured, he could not leave her out there. He took out his communicator and tried to contact Mara. The signal crackled, then stabilized. Mara's voice came through, strained. "Ethan, where are you? Are you safe?" "I'm safe," Ethan said. "I found an overturned cargo transport at the old pads. There was someone inside." "A child, alien, she's injured but stable." A pause. "A child?" Mara's tone sharpened. "Ethan, you understand what that could mean? Do you know whose?" "No," Ethan admitted. "Not sure. Her suit is high quality, not a trader's kid, I think." Mara exhaled. "Storm's still active." "We can't send people out. Keep her inside. Keep her calm. When the stabilizers reset, we'll check the crash site and logs." Ethan looked at Sarah, who watched him carefully. "Understood," he said. "I'll take care of her." "Be careful," Mara added, softer now. "If that child belongs to who I think she might belong to, this could bring attention we don't want." Ethan's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Mara hesitated. "There are rumors, a queen, a very powerful one. Her people don't play games." Ethan did not respond right away. He had heard stories too, traded in low voices at the supply office. A warrior empire led by a queen who did not tolerate disrespect. A fleet that could lock down a whole region of space if it wanted. He had never believed those stories mattered to a quiet colony like Greyridge. Now they might. Ethan ended the call and set the communicator down. He turned back to Sarah. "You're safe here," he said, trying to sound confident. "No one can come in during this storm. We'll rest, okay?" Sarah blinked slowly. Her eyes seemed heavy now. Exhaustion was starting to win. Ethan stood, walked to the small kitchen corner, and warmed a simple soup packet. The smell filled the room, mild spices and broth. He poured it into a bowl and let it cool. When he offered it to Sarah, she hesitated again. She watched him take a small spoonful first. Then she accepted the bowl and tried a careful bite. Her expression changed, tiny but real. She ate slowly, as if afraid the food might vanish. Ethan did not speak much. He let the silence be calm instead of awkward. After she finished, he helped her settle deeper into the couch. He dimmed the lights and placed the emergency lamp nearby. Sarah's eyes stayed open for a long time. Each time the storm thundered, she flinched. Ethan sat nearby, reading from his tablet but watching her from the corner of his eye. At last, she spoke quietly in broken trade language, the kind used by merchants. "Where's ship?" Ethan put down the tablet. "Your ship crashed," he said. He chose his words carefully. "The storm was bad. You were alone inside. I brought you here." Sarah stared. "My people come?" "Maybe," Ethan said honestly. "We will find out when the storm ends." She swallowed. Her small hand gripped the blanket. "Mother angry." Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. "Your mother?" Sarah's gaze lowered. She did not answer directly, but the way she said it, heavy and fearful, told Ethan enough. A queen, then, or someone close to one? Ethan felt the weight of the situation press down, but he kept his voice steady. "Right now you need rest," he said. "We can talk later." Sarah's eyes searched his face as if trying to read the truth behind his calm tone. Then she asked, very softly, "You take me?" Ethan understood the fear inside those words. It was not a simple question. It was a child asking if she had been captured, if she had been stolen, if she was now a tool in someone else's plans. Ethan shook his head immediately. "No," he said. "I did not take you. I found you. I helped you, that's all." Sarah stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned her head slightly and closed her eyes. Ethan stayed awake until the storm began to fade. Hours later, the wind softened. The thunder moved farther away. The stabilizer towers in the distance stopped flickering and returned to a steady glow. The air outside still hissed with rain, but the violent force was gone. Ethan stepped to the window and looked out. The crashed transport was still there, but the dust had settled enough that he could see the colony again. Lights came on in buildings. People began to move outside cautiously, checking damage. Ethan returned to the couch. Sarah was awake now, sitting upright with effort. She looked less pale. Her breathing was calmer. She watched Ethan like he was part of a puzzle she could not solve. Ethan crouched in front of her. "The storm is ending," he said. "People will come check the crash. We will find out who you are and where you belong." Sarah's fingers tightened around the blanket. "If they find me," she struggled with the words. Ethan nodded slowly. "I know you're afraid." Sarah looked away. "My people not like humans." Ethan let out a quiet breath. "Some people don't like anyone who is different," he said. "But that's not your fault." She stared at him again, and something in her face shifted, less fear, more curiosity. "Why help?" Ethan considered the question. Many answers came to mind, because it was right, because no child should be alone, because he could not live with himself if he walked away. He chose the simplest truth. "Because you needed help," he said, "and I was there." Sarah seemed to hold that answer in her mind like a stone, turning it around to see all sides. Perhaps in her world, help always had a price. Perhaps kindness always meant weakness. Perhaps adults always demanded something back. Ethan did not demand anything. He stood and made a call to Mara again. "Storm S down," he said. "She's stable. Can you check the transport logs?" Mara's voice came back quickly. "We're on it." Also, Ethan, our long-range scanner, picked up something. A signal burst, very strong, far above the planet. "It wasn't from us." Ethan's throat went dry. "A ship." "Not one ship," Mara said. "Multiple big ones. They're not in orbit yet, but they're moving in." Ethan looked at Sarah, who was watching him closely now, sensing the shift in his body. "How long?" he asked. Mara hesitated. "Hard to say, maybe hours, maybe less." Ethan ended the call and stood still for a moment. The quiet life he had built on Greyridge suddenly felt small, like a thin wall against a rising tide. Sarah spoke softly, almost like a confession. "Mother, coming." Ethan met her eyes. In that moment, he realized the truth was already written across the sky, even if the colony could not see it yet. A powerful force was on its way, drawn by one missing child. Sarah's lips pressed together. She looked down, then up again. Her voice was small but clear. "If Mother see me here, she think you steal." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then we'll tell the truth," he said. "We'll show what happened." Sarah's eyes shimmered with something like hope, quickly hidden. She shifted on the couch and tried to stand. Her leg protested, and she sat back down. Ethan moved closer, steadying her gently, careful not to make her feel trapped. "Easy," he said. "You're healing." Sarah's gaze flicked to his hand on her arm, then to his face. She did not pull away. She seemed to accept his touch now, not fully trusting, but no longer afraid of it. The rest of the day passed in tense calm. Colony workers checked the crash site and brought back fragments of the transport's identity code. Ethan learned only that it was registered to a high-level diplomatic route, not a common trader line. That explained the quality of Sarah's suit. It also explained why the transport had tried to land even as the stabilizers failed. Someone important had been inside, someone who could not wait. Ethan fed Sarah again, this time with simple bread and fruit paste. He brought her a small toy drone from a dusty box, something that could hover and blink lights. He set it on the floor and activated it gently. The drone lifted and drifted in slow circles. Sarah watched it like it was magic. Her mouth opened slightly. She reached out and touched it as it passed. The drone adjusted, hovering away, then returning. She made a quiet sound that might have been laughter. Ethan felt warmth spread through his chest. It was a tiny moment, but it mattered. A child should have small joys even in danger. Later, when the sun dipped low and the clouds turned orange at the edges, Sarah grew quiet again. She sat by the window, watching the horizon. Ethan followed her gaze. For a moment, he saw nothing but the fading light and distant towers. Then his workshop's receiver beeped, a long-range sensor alert. It displayed a simple message, multiple high-mass objects entering the system's outer range, ships, big ones. Sarah did not need the message to know. She whispered, "They hear." Ethan stepped behind her, not looming, just standing close enough to feel like support. "We'll face it," he said. Sarah turned and looked up at him. Her eyes were wide and serious. Then she surprised him by reaching out and taking his hand, holding it for a second as if testing whether it was real. Ethan did not squeeze too hard. He just held back, steady and warm. Sarah's lips moved around words she had likely never used before. She spoke in trade language again, slow and careful as if the sentence was fragile. "You, safe place," Ethan swallowed. "Yes," he said quietly, "you're safe here." She looked down at their joined hands, then back up. Her voice came out even softer, almost like she was saying it to herself. "Dad," Ethan froze. The word landed in the air between them, shocking and heavy. Not because it was wrong, but because it was too big for such a short time. Too much meaning packed into one small sound. Sarah blinked as if she had not meant to say it out loud. She pulled her hand back quickly, eyes darting away, embarrassed or afraid. Ethan took a slow breath. He knelt so his face was level with hers. "Sarah," he said gently, "you don't have to call me anything you don't want to." Sarah's eyes flicked back to him. "I don't know word," she whispered, then corrected herself, searching for the right meaning. "I know word, it mean protect, home." Ethan's throat tightened. He understood now. In her world, maybe there was no word for a stranger who chose to care. Maybe there was no easy label for safety that came without force. So she used the closest word she had. Ethan nodded slowly. "If that word helps you feel safe," he said, "then it's okay." Sarah stared at him as if waiting for the hidden price. When none came, her shoulders dropped a little. Outside, the last light faded. The first bright star appeared above the ridge. And far beyond that, in the cold, dark space between worlds, the Queen's fleet moved closer. Silent, unstoppable, and full of questions that would shake Greyridge to its foundations. Ethan closed the workshop shutters and checked the locks, though he knew locks meant little against warships. He returned to the couch and sat beside Sarah, not touching, just present. The little drone toy hovered in slow circles near the ceiling, blinking gentle lights. Sarah leaned slightly toward him, still tense, still afraid, but no longer alone. And in the quiet hum of the heater, in the small circle of warmth in a hard frontier world, Ethan understood something that would guide every choice he made from this point on. No matter who came through the sky, no matter what titles they carried, no matter how powerful their ships were, a child's trust was not something to be thrown away. If a queen wanted answers, she would get them. But she would also have to face a truth she did not expect, that a human, with no crown and no army, could still become the strongest shield a child had ever known. Morning arrived slowly on Greyridge, as if the planet itself was unsure whether it should welcome the new day. The sky held a pale silver color, and the air still carried the sharp smell left by the storm. Dust clung to buildings, and workers moved quietly across the colony, repairing damaged panels and checking systems that had strained under the pressure. Inside Ethan's workshop, the heater hummed softly. The space felt calm compared to the restless energy outside. Tools rested where he had left them, and the little drone toy hovered near the ceiling before settling gently onto a shelf as its power faded. Sarah sat on the couch, wrapped in the warming blanket. Her posture was straighter now, though she still moved carefully to protect her injured leg. She watched Ethan as he prepared breakfast with simple movements. He worked in silence, measuring water, heating a small pan, and slicing bread. The smell of warm food filled the room. She studied everything he did, her eyes moving from his hands to his face, trying to understand him. Trust did not come easily to her. Her species taught caution from an early age. Strength meant control. Emotions were often hidden behind discipline, yet this human acted without fear, without demanding anything from her. Ethan turned and noticed her watching. He gave a small nod, not making a big deal of it. "Morning," he said simply. Sarah hesitated before replying. Her trade language had improved overnight, or perhaps she was simply more willing to use it. "Morning," she echoed quietly. He placed a plate on the small table beside her. The food was basic, soft eggs mixed with grain and a piece of warm bread, but he arranged it neatly. He also brought a cup of warm drink similar to the one she had accepted the night before. She looked at the plate carefully before eating, as if checking for danger. Then she took a bite, her shoulders relaxed slightly. Food meant safety. Food meant someone expected her to stay. Outside, distant voices carried through the walls. Vehicles moved across the landing field. Repairs were underway everywhere. Ethan sat on a stool across from her, giving her space. He checked his communicator again. Several messages blinked on the screen. Mara had sent updates through the night. The most recent one read, "Long-range sensors confirm incoming fleet. Unknown scale." Arrival estimated within hours. Ethan exhaled slowly. He had expected this, but seeing it confirmed still made his chest feel tight. Sarah noticed the change in his expression. "They close?" she asked. "Yes," Ethan said honestly. "They're getting closer." She lowered her gaze to the floor. Her fingers curled into the blanket. For a moment she looked smaller, less like a warrior child and more like someone who did not want to face what was coming. Ethan spoke gently. "We'll handle it when they arrive, one step at a time." She nodded but did not look convinced. Later that morning, Mara arrived at the workshop. She knocked first, even though she had access permission. Ethan opened the door and she stepped inside quickly, brushing dust from her jacket. Her eyes went immediately to Sarah. Mara had seen many aliens during her time on Greyridge, but even she seemed surprised by the child's presence. Sarah's posture became rigid, her gaze sharp and alert. Mara raised both hands slightly, showing she meant no harm. "Hello," she said softly. Sarah did not respond, but she watched closely. Mara turned to Ethan and spoke quietly. "The fleet is massive, bigger than anything we've seen near this region. They're holding position just outside orbit for now." Ethan nodded. "Have they sent any messages?" "Not yet," Mara said, "but our scanners picked up energy signatures that match rumors about that warrior empire we heard about before." Sarah's head lifted at that. Mara noticed and hesitated. "She understands more than I thought." Ethan nodded again. "She said her mother is coming." Mara's expression tightened. "Then we need to be careful. A misunderstanding could cause panic." Sarah spoke suddenly, her voice low but steady. "Mother's strong, but not bad." Mara blinked in surprise. "That's good to hear." Sarah looked uncertain, as if she was not fully sure of her own words. The rest of the morning passed in tense preparation. Ethan helped reinforce the workshop doors and checked emergency power systems. Mara coordinated with colony leaders through her communicator, organizing calm responses instead of panic. Sarah watched everything. She tried to stand and help, but Ethan gently encouraged her to sit when her leg began to hurt. At one point she said quietly, "You work even when afraid." Ethan paused. "Everyone works when they're afraid," he replied. "That's how things get done." She seemed to think about that deeply. By midday, the sky darkened, not from weather this time, but from shadow. The first ship appeared as a distant shape against the stars, enormous and silent. Then another followed, and another. Their forms were elegant and sharp, designed with both beauty and power in mind. They moved into orbit with slow precision, blocking part of the sunlight as they aligned themselves above Greyridge. Colony alarms sounded, not as warnings, but as alerts to gather and prepare. Ethan and Sarah stepped outside together. People across the colony stared upward. Some whispered in fear. Others simply stood still, unable to look away. Sarah's breathing quickened. She leaned slightly toward Ethan without realizing it. A beam of light descended from one of the ships and touched down near the central landing pad. The air shimmered as energy formed a stable path from sky to ground. Figures began to appear. They were tall, armored, and disciplined in their movements. Their armor shone with faint patterns that shifted as they walked. They carried no visible weapons in their hands, but their presence alone carried authority. At the center of the group walked a woman taller than the rest. Her posture was perfect, her expression calm and controlled. She wore armor that looked both ceremonial and functional. A crown-like structure rested along her head, integrated into her suit. The colony fell silent. The Queen had arrived. Sarah froze completely. Her hand tightened around Ethan's sleeve. Ethan felt the tension move through her like a wave. He did not speak. He simply stood beside her. The Queen's gaze moved across the gathered crowd with quiet intensity. She did not rush. She did not show anger, but her presence filled the space and everyone felt it. When her eyes landed on Sarah, the world seemed to stop. Sarah inhaled sharply. The Queen stepped forward slowly. Her expression shifted, not into relief, but into something deeper and more complex. She spoke in a clear, strong voice that carried across the landing field. The language was not trade language, but many translation devices activated automatically, converting her words into understandable speech. "My daughter," she said. Sarah stepped forward slightly, then stopped, uncertain. The Queen's gaze moved to Ethan. Her eyes narrowed, measuring him carefully. "And you," she said, her tone calm but sharp. "Human." The word carried weight as if it held both curiosity and warning. Ethan met her gaze without aggression. He stood straight but relaxed, showing respect without submission. "She was injured when I found her," he said simply. "I brought her to safety." The Queen studied him for a long moment. Around her, the armored warriors remained perfectly still. Sarah suddenly moved forward and stood between them, facing her mother. "He help," she said quickly, her voice shaking slightly. "He protect." The Queen's expression flickered with surprise. Her daughter had spoken with urgency, defending the human without hesitation. The Queen's attention shifted again to Ethan, now with deeper interest. "You claim no ownership?" she asked. Ethan shook his head immediately. "No, she is your daughter. I only helped." Sarah looked back at him quickly, as if checking his words. The Queen walked closer, her movements smooth and controlled. She stopped only a few steps away. Up close, her presence felt even stronger. Her eyes were sharp, but there was also exhaustion hidden behind them, like someone who had crossed many stars without rest. "She calls you something," the Queen said slowly. "Explain." Sarah's shoulders stiffened. Ethan hesitated for only a moment. "She used a word she understands as safety," he said. "I did not ask for it." The Queen tilted her head slightly. "And the word?" Sarah spoke before Ethan could answer. "Dad." The word hung in the air like a sudden storm. Murmurs spread through the crowd. The Queen's eyes widened slightly, and for the first time her perfect control cracked. Shock moved across her face before she mastered it again. "Explain," she repeated, softer now. Ethan took a breath. "She was alone," he said, "afraid, injured. I gave her food, shelter, and care. I never tried to replace you. I just helped her feel safe." The Queen looked down at Sarah. "You give this title freely?" Sarah nodded slowly. "He kind," she said. "He not take, he give." The Queen's expression changed again, confusion mixing with something else, curiosity, perhaps. She turned to her guards and gave a brief command. They stepped back, creating more space. Then she addressed Ethan directly. "Humans are known for unpredictability," she said. "Why risk conflict with my empire for a child not your own?" Ethan answered honestly. "Because she needed help." Silence followed. The Queen studied him as if searching for deception. She circled him slowly, observing every detail, his worn clothes, his calm posture, his steady eyes. Finally, she stopped in front of him again. "You do not fear me?" she asked. Ethan thought for a moment. "I respect you," he said, "but fear doesn't change the truth." The Queen's lips pressed together. Around them, the colony watched in tense silence. Sarah stepped closer to Ethan again, unconsciously placing herself near him. The Queen noticed, and for the first time since arriving, she seemed unsure how to react. Her daughter, raised in discipline and strength, stood beside a human as if he were part of her world. The Queen exhaled slowly. "This situation is unexpected," she said at last. Then she turned back toward the beam of light descending from her ship. "We will speak further," she said. "There is much to understand." Ethan sensed that the real test had only begun. As the Queen's fleet hovered above Greyridge and the colony waited for what would come next, one truth became clear. This was no longer just about a lost child. It was about two very different ideas of strength meeting for the first time, and neither side fully understood the other yet. The morning after the Queen's arrival felt heavier than any storm. Greyridge had been quiet for decades, and yet now the colony's streets buzzed with tension. Traders paused in mid-step, children clutched their parents' hands, and even the normally confident engineers and miners moved cautiously. The sight of alien warships in orbit, silent and enormous, cast long shadows across the landing fields, and people whispered in low voices about the Queen and her daughter. Ethan stood in the center of his workshop, Sarah beside him. Her small hand rested lightly on his arm. She had stayed close all night, uneasy in her sleep but safe in the human's care. The words she had spoken the night before, calling him Dad, lingered in his mind. He had never expected such a bond to form so quickly, but now he realized it was more than affection. It was trust, pure and urgent. Outside, Mara coordinated with the colony's leaders. They worked to prepare the citizens without spreading panic. Emergency protocols were reviewed, defenses reinforced, and communication channels cleared. Signals from the Queen's fleet remained minimal but precise. They were waiting, watching, testing, and the colony felt every moment of that pressure. Ethan turned to Sarah. "We need to plan," he said softly. "I don't know what her mother expects, but we need to be ready if things go wrong." Sarah's dark eyes widened. "Ready how?" she asked. Her voice was small, but it carried determination. "We fight." Ethan shook his head. "Not like that," he replied. "We protect people, we survive. We do what we can without starting a war we cannot win." She seemed to consider this, her gaze shifting to the distant landing pads and the shadows cast by the alien fleet. "Humans weak." "Some humans, maybe," Ethan said. "But not all. Strength is different from power. It's not only about weapons or armor, it's about what you do when it matters most." She leaned against him, small and fragile, but her expression suggested a growing understanding. She had already seen him act in ways that seemed strange to her culture, helping others without expectation, risking danger for someone else's safety. To her, these actions were a new kind of power, one that demanded respect in its own quiet way. The first official message arrived that morning, transmitted through the colony's translator network. It was brief, clear, and unsettling. The Queen's voice carried authority even through automated translation. "Child found in human custody. Immediate explanation required. Deviation from protocol is unacceptable. No harm may come to the child. Any interference will be met with force." Ethan read the message aloud to Sarah. She flinched slightly at the word force, but she did not hide. She met his eyes, her own filled with a mixture of fear and courage. "Force not needed," she said softly. "He protect." Ethan nodded. "We'll show them that. We don't need violence." He spent the next hours preparing for the Queen's emissaries to arrive. He gathered supplies, reinforced doors, and checked every system in his workshop. Mara and other colony officials worked outside, coordinating safety for the citizens, ensuring evacuation paths were clear, and preparing neutral grounds for discussion. When the emissaries finally arrived, they moved with a precision that made the ground seem almost sacred. Each step was deliberate. Armor plates shifted silently, glinting in the morning light. They scanned the workshop from every angle, their sensors calculating, measuring, recording. The Queen's voice came again through the fleet's communications network, calm and authoritative. "Human, step forward. Explain your presence with the child." Ethan's heart beat steadily, but he did not panic. He stepped forward, keeping his posture open and non-threatening. Sarah stayed behind him, a small shield of presence as though her trust in him gave her courage. "I found her," he said simply. "She was alone, injured, and scared. I brought her to safety. That is all I have done." There was a pause. The emissaries exchanged silent signals. The Queen's eyes narrowed. "You claim no allegiance to any power except your own?" "Yes," Ethan said. "I have no agenda beyond keeping her safe." Sarah's small hand found his arm again. "Truth," she whispered. Truth." The Queen's gaze shifted briefly to her daughter. Sarah's posture was firm now, not fearful but resolute. She had made her choice, and the Queen could see it. A mixture of emotions crossed the Queen's face: surprise, pride, and a faint twinge of curiosity. "Very well," the Queen said, her voice steady. "If your intentions are as you claim, you must prove it." There are threats to this colony, and if you wish to keep her safe, you must act. Ethan glanced at Mara, who gave a small nod. Outside, the colony was tense, waiting for what might come next. Suddenly, alarms blared. A group of unknown ships appeared near the planet's edge. They were smaller than the Queen's fleet, but fast and aggressive. Raiders perhaps taking advantage of the Queen's presence to strike before the colony could defend itself fully. Ethan moved immediately. "Sarah, stay close to me," he said. He ran to the door, scanning the sky. The first shots from the raiders' energy weapons struck the ground nearby, sending sparks flying. Dust and debris kicked into the air. The Queen's emissaries reacted swiftly, moving to intercept the attackers. Their weapons discharged, precise and devastating, disabling several raider ships instantly. But the remaining attackers continued their assault, firing at unprotected areas and forcing the colony into chaos. Ethan ducked behind a reinforced support beam, pulling Sarah close. "We need to get people inside," he shouted over the blasts. "Help anyone who is injured, then move to safety." Sarah's eyes widened at the sound of battle, but she did not move away. Instead, she watched him closely, learning from the way he remained calm under pressure. His decisions were quick, precise, and never reckless. He guided frightened citizens, helped the injured, and coordinated with the Queen's emissaries without a word lost in panic. For hours, the battle continued. Raiding ships fell one by one to the Queen's forces, and yet the attackers pushed relentlessly. Ethan worked tirelessly, directing small teams, repairing damaged energy shields, and ensuring that civilians stayed out of harm's way. At one point, a section of the colony's central supply building caught fire. Ethan ran through smoke and debris, carrying a small alien child away from danger. Sarah watched him, her expression serious. She had seen him act for others before, but this was different. This was courage under pressure, the type that could save lives in moments when fear might freeze anyone else. After several hours, the last of the raiders were defeated or fled. The colony's defenses held, though damage was significant. Fires smoldered, equipment lay broken, and people were shaken. Yet no lives were lost, thanks in large part to Ethan's calm leadership. The Queen observed everything silently from her elevated position on the landing pad. Her daughter had stayed close to Ethan, and she noted how others in the colony responded to him, not with fear, but with trust. Humans, she realized, were more resilient than she had assumed. Their strength was not just in physical power, but in their willingness to act when others hesitated, in their capacity for empathy, and in their ability to make hard choices for the good of all. As the smoke cleared and the dust settled, the Queen descended to stand before Ethan. The battle was over, but the true test remained. She spoke, her voice carrying authority and curiosity in equal measure. "Human, your actions have been noted. You did not command through force. You did not act for recognition. You acted for the safety of others, including my daughter." Ethan met her gaze without hesitation. "Yes," he said simply, "that is all I did." The Queen's eyes softened, though her expression remained guarded. She looked at Sarah, who now stood proudly beside Ethan, not out of defiance but from trust. "She has chosen to stand with you," the Queen said quietly. "This is unexpected." Sarah's small hand reached for Ethan again. "Safe," she whispered. "He keeps safe." The Queen nodded slowly, understanding the truth in her daughter's words. Strength could take many forms. It could be measured in skill, power, and discipline, but it could also be measured in courage, compassion, and the quiet determination to protect those who cannot protect themselves. She turned to her emissaries and gave a brief command. "We will speak further, but not here. This human has earned a moment of peace. We will continue this discussion privately." Ethan exhaled, relief washing over him. Sarah's grip on his arm loosened slightly, but she stayed close. The colony, shaken but safe, began to regroup. People whispered about what they had witnessed, some in awe, some in disbelief. Ethan knew that this was only the beginning. The Queen's presence, her fleet, and the political implications of her daughter's safety would shape the days to come. But for now, they had survived. Lives had been saved, trust had been earned, and a bond had been strengthened. Sarah leaned against Ethan, exhausted but calm. "They see?" she asked quietly. "Yes," Ethan said. "They see the truth, and you see it too," she nodded slowly. The warmth of the small workshop, the soft hum of the heater, and the presence of someone who had chosen to protect her filled her with a new sense of security. For the first time since being separated from her mother, she felt truly safe. Ethan looked at her, realizing the weight of responsibility he had accepted, whether by choice or circumstance. The storm outside had passed, but the larger storms, political, cultural, and personal, were only beginning, yet he was ready to face them. Because sometimes, he thought, survival was more than staying alive. Sometimes it was about being strong enough to protect others, to be the shield that others could trust, and to do so without asking for recognition. And in that understanding, both human and alien learned something new. That strength could be shared, that courage could take many forms, and that trust could bridge worlds in ways no one had anticipated.